Okay, I'm sure you can see my screen by now and my voice is clear, so all is good on the hardware side. I would like to continue with some of the examples we were doing with the quotation marks for building the search phrases and emphasizing the words to be found as a mandatory return in search where you have enclosed them within quotations. That's what we were doing the other day. There's example 4. Okay, then example 5. Now, few examples we are going to continue with. There is example 4 where we have used the quotes to actually describe some instances of how we have laid out the search query formats using the quotation marks. These are 1 through 5 in example 4. The idea here is for you to get a sense of what could be considered a better search results based on these different queries where we are moving the quotation marks enclosure, and obviously we're including including some of the words inside of quotes and while leaving out some of them outside of the quotation marks. And then we have results shown here as the number of results only, which is it's just a quantification of quantifying the results. And then we're going to analyze why these results with different, the number of results, how they can be considered as more filtered or more focused results or not. It's quality versus quantity and so on. So in the first instance, you could see that we wrote Steve Jobs' important life lessons. Steve Jobs, I guess, important life lessons was a kind of a title for a speech that Steve Jobs delivered in Stanford way back. So the idea here in the first one is just to lay out or put all the words one next to another as if they're sequentially making sense for the search to find the right results. Whereas if we look close and we have learned from how we were putting certain words within quotes, that unless quotation marks are used, the words may be combined or you might get a lot more results and sometimes erratic results because it is free, the search is free to combine these words as it pleases because none of these are enclosed within quotes. So you could see we are getting a lot more results, 3,860,000 results, a lot. In the second instance, what we did is we tried to make our search more controlled and get more refined result, and therefore the number of results would be less because now the search is returning something which has put a restriction, and therefore the command is asking for certain words to be present as they are laid out in the wordings important life lessons versus Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs is a name of a person and important life lessons was the title of a speech. Now what search did is that it looked for something that is to be matched exactly according to how it is spelled inside of quotes like important life and lessons together as one single search phrase. Whereas the word Steve Jobs is outside of it, meaning that important life lessons has to have some reference or to connect with the words on the left of it. The other sense of why certain words are within quotes is because Steve Jobs is a name and important life lessons is a title. So these are two different things. When you are combining certain words or certain names along with the title of something, it needs to have some relationship that would make it look separate, yet it would have some sort of a relationship between the two different sets of wordings, one inside of quotes and one outside. So the result is that the search is now more focused to look for something that is important life lessons as a title, separate from Steve Jobs, yet it is combined to give it a context so that this 3 words have a relationship with Steve Jobs. So now it makes more sense. But if you look at the first one, it is as if you have written a complete sentence and you have actually and it could grammatically or structurally may not have the wordings found exactly in the same sequence by default or based on how they're phrased. I would have written, if one is to be set right, I would have written it Steve Jobs' speech on important life lessons, something that linguistically makes sense. But if you're going to throw in words the way it is set right now, you're combining the 2 different concepts. One is a name and the other title in a sequence which may not be found exactly as it's written. So you will get a lot of combination of words and you'll get a lot many results. In the third instance, I wrote, say, Steve Jobs' important life lessons. But here we got only 5 results. Why is that, you think? You just got only 5 results. If it is good or it is bad or it is, probably not as a better quality of results. I think it's number of results are less, but the quality of results are not that great. If you actually run it in your search, you will see that it is not bringing all those great results. One of the reasons, even though it is more refined, because less number of results probably gives gives a notion that you're getting more accuracy in your search, but that's not the case. And the reason is that Steve Jobs' important life lessons, again, linguistically, it may not be set properly, or it may not be as if it is to be matched exactly as a mirror image somewhere in the content pages you're searching. So for that reason, you would be better off if you separate it as we did in number 2. And even better, we could even improve this search by putting Steve Jobs within quotations as well, so that the name is separated. And then the important life lessons could be another set of words, which for sure that is part of the title of this speech, so that it remains intact and remains complete in its meaning and its format. Whereas another word, speech, is injected or placed in there as a helping word, a tail word, a context, or a secondary context. So you can insert another word to really give it a little bit of more of an accuracy. And you could see that the results are 51,700. Certainly not as focused as in number 3, but at least looking at the quality of the results, you will find that these were the best results. In number 5, we got 187,000 results, but not very happy with number 5. When we compare with number 4, we could safely say that number 4 was more controlled. Number 5 is still leaving out some of the gaps by not placing the word Steve Jobs within quotation marks. So anyway, these are just some examples to enhance your concept of where quotation marks can be. You can keep moving the quotation marks. You can add certain words within quotes or leave out certain other words outside by intention of letting the search find some better substitute, so that you give it that kind of a flexibility. So this is how we have used example 5. In in example 5, I'm sorry, we did example 4. Now in example 5, I'm looking at A, B, C, and D, and you could see that there are certain notations or stop words that are not enforced or are not considered in your search. So if you wrote something with a question mark and ending with a question mark, that search phrase or that question or something that you are asking the search as by putting it in the form of a question will not be considered or would not be forced by the user, because it is going to drop those notations like a question mark. Other stop words in these examples ABC are like what, where, how, all of these are stop words. So to enforce or to force the search to find these as mandatory return or not to ignore these words or these question marks, you're going to be able to put them within quotes so that you have a better chance of making the search find it on those pages alongside other words like internet research or internet research within quotes and the question mark also there. It's not that it's going to look for something that matches internet research question mark. It could be other words in between too, because we are not putting everything within the question mark unless we have done it in a way where it is showing in number 3. I have put internet research and ending with a question mark and put these 3 individual words or including the sign within the quotations so that this part is forced, whereas what is not enforced at all. So truly speaking, the question mark would be considered because it is forced recognition, whereas the word what may be ignored totally. So C is not entirely correct. Now compare 3 with 4 and see what we did. The vertical bars, by the way, are denoting the Boolean OR. We haven't dealt with this one yet, but for the sake of understanding the number 4, just think of the vertical bar as having the same function as OR, or a choice of words that are on the left and right of OR. In that sense, I would say that you are giving the search the ability now to look for the word what, or look for the word where, or look for the word how. I'm going to pull this out just to try to do it on the whiteboard that we create with Notepad. So I'm going to copy this and explain it better over here. If it is not visible, I'm going to make the fonts larger. Remember, I was telling you about the quotation marks open and close. If you look at this query carefully, you will notice that this quotation mark, instead of appearing as closed one against the open quotation marks, it is actually left open. So this is the error which you have to be mindful of. Now coming back to where we have tried to use what, where, and how along with the word internet research and a question mark. So this is obviously is going to be matched in the content pages. However, the word what, where, and how will also be enforced, but with the choice of finding any one of these. All right. So this is why we have used OR, or a vertical bar, as in Boolean choice of finding either terms on the left or right of OR. All right. Should be something that is, I'm assuming it's, you are able to understand the concept here. Now, what happens if I had not used the or? What's going to happen? If I don't use the or in this search, what are we telling the search? We are telling the search to find these words, what, where, and how, all stop words. Make sure that they are found in that document or in the same document along with the internet research and a question mark, so that the question somehow is found on those pages. All right. But there is an error here. Error is that what happens if you force certain words inside of the quotes and they are not found anywhere, or logically they don't connect with, let's say, internet research somehow, it would not find any page for you. So what is the likelihood of finding where or how or what? We don't know. In order for us to give the search engine to find any one of these, as if these are the choices, 3 choices of words, we are inserting the or command. If we don't insert the or command in between, and if all of these which are forced are not found together on the same document, the entire search may fail. Okay, that's why we have to use the or. Anyway, the or is to be discussed in more detail later. But for now, I just want to finish up the quotation marks as far as how we can keep switching or changing the quotations or inside quoted words by moving those quotation marks. A lot of times you make your search very tight with the queries that have where you have used the quotes extensively. Basically made it tight enough that results are either not coming or they're of very low quality. So for that, in that situation, you have to open it up a little bit by removing the quotations outside and moving the search phrases or some of the words inside quotes to be moved outside of the quotes. That's by I guess by strategy. Okay, so that you start to open up, close some, open some, until you find that you have, you're getting somewhat the kind of results which you're happy with. Only then you would make it an absolute search query. Otherwise, you can, keep switching the quotes. This slide is there for your reference, even though I have explained the concept yesterday, and how certain words get connected or certain notations with the gaps that you leave in between characters or notations or words or anything that is alphanumeric would actually break those words and make it into smaller single keywords. So the gap is what is explained here. And we have done this part in this example. It was a chemistry formula. And here, the upward arrow in the red font is showing the gap, so that it tells you that character gap separates 2 words. Here, the word acid and 3,6 dichloro, all of it has become one search term. And there are 2 words or 2 keywords here. This is one term and this is another search term. All right. Stop words, I have explained also, leaving a gap, the stop word, comma will get dropped. It's going to start to ignore the minus sign, which I showed you. If you leave a gap between the dash and number 6, it is going to be considered as a minus, something that is similar to NOT in Booleans, or this is the command which is going to leave out the entire search term where it is coming right after the minus sign. All right, the next concept is about, first of all, let's just, this is absolutely too basic, but this is to introduce you to Boolean operators. So I'm going to run this slide anyway. See, in textual databases, the Boolean operators are similar to how the algebraic expressions are resolved. Algebraic expressions are really, or you could say that algebra is the kind of mathematics or the kind of expressions that identifies with objects where you can parse the value or give a value to any object. So object in this case are the search terms or the keywords, assuming that any algebraic expression that identifies with object. Object could be, like I said, could be anything, but primarily they are either, the words or alphabets or even numbers. So the Booleans, in the way it is algebraically resolved, is through parsing individual words as objects. So each object is given a command to, and when I say object, I'm talking about words, keywords, and search phrases. Search phrases can be a single search term with multiple words in it, or it could be a set of or number of keywords that may get connected, or the search may assume to have a relationship with each other. Whatever the case may be, individually each keyword is considered an object, and each search term is an object for the search. And for those words to be controlled in a more mathematical way, we are using algebraic expressions, also called Boolean expressions. And Booleans are, are the only type of operators that can do a specialized function when it has to deal with combination of words, single words, or it has to deal with the objective of controlling the formation of the words or formation of any search phrase. And at the same time, Booleans would also have the ability to either drop certain words, exclude certain words, or basically look for the approximation or the area of where the words are separated from each other as having a parameter. So just to make it easy for us to understand it, because we are not creating algorithms, we are doing our searches. So we'll just deal with 3 Booleans. Later on, I will talk about another kind of a Boolean operator, which is going to deal with the proximity or the distance between certain words or certain search terms for the information that is missing. So that part we will also continue under the Boolean search operators, which is in addition to what we are doing right now. The basic is the AND. AND is a conjoiner. It has a typical function of adding 2 words together or 2 search terms together by being in the middle of it, or where the 2 terms on the left or the right of it are to be considered as together in the sequence, or has to be together in the page itself. So we are going to use AND there. Or is to give a choice to the search to find terms that are either on the left of it or on the right of it. So it is more like a consideration of finding at least one term that falls on either side of it. Not is where you don't want certain words to be included in your search, or you want the entire search term or a search phrase to be ignored or taken out in your search results. So you're going to use NOT. Okay. Let's and it is all got to be in the large cap. So don't use small letters. So two concepts together, A plus B, meaning that AND has to have a term on the left and a term on the right. You cannot put AND in the beginning of anything or any search term. It has to have a relationship. These are relational booleans, which means they only act when you have two terms mentioned on either side of it. Then we have OR. OR is also exactly requiring the two terms to be present on the left and the right of it. Okay. NOT is slightly different. By the way, NOT is no longer recognized in the Google search. You don't use NOT anymore. Instead, you use a minus sign. That makes it a little bit different. For instance, if I want apple and oranges, supposing if this is the query, this is a Boolean operator and it should ideally work, but the Google search does not allow it anymore for different reasons. Now, if I have to write this in a correct way, it should be written like this in Google search. Another thing you should notice is that for any Boolean operator you're using, like for example, this one, A and D, there has to be a gap between the term that is going to fall on the left of it, and similarly another single character gap for the term to fall on the right of it. But make sure there is always a single character gap, right? And then when you're going to combine another Boolean operator to extend your search to express that you don't want mangoes to be included, and therefore you have used NOT, you always going to be watchful of the gap that is going to or should be always there between the terms. But because NOT is no longer recognized in the Google search, I'm going to show you how it's going to respond or what is the acceptable format. Okay. So the acceptable format you are going to leave a gap of a single character after oranges and put a minus sign, and make sure there is no gap between the minus and the first letter of the term mangoes. You will never leave a gap. It has to be hugging the minus sign. So whatever terms is on the right hand side you want to get rid of, you make sure that this dash or a minus sign is going to be followed by any search term that could be a continuation. For example, mangoes, the minus sign, and let's suppose it was Mexican oranges. If you have to use a minus sign, you make sure that both Mexican and oranges are placed inside of the quotes first. For both of these together, because both of these together are one single search term. Okay, So we've put it within quotation marks, and then the minus sign is going to be right before where the quotation mark starts, so that there is no gap that you're going to leave with the whenever you're using a minus sign. So this entire term is just going to go away. All right. But if you had not used the quotes, what will happen is that the search might think that you only want to get rid of the word Mexican, and then the word mangoes may not be connected with Mexican as one term. And therefore, the behavior would change totally. Only the word Mexican is taken out, and mangoes is considered as a part of the search or to be included in the search, or the search engine might just drop it totally. So just remember that these are some of the fundamentals or basics of how we're going to apply the minus sign. Now, next is a little bit more variation of how the modern search takes place these days. And even though AND is a recognized Boolean operator, but we don't use it as much. Or you could say that the search engine does not promote, and I'm talking about Google search exclusively. The Google search does not promote it as much, and instead wants you to use the quotation marks closed. All right. In other words, supposing that this is how it is written according to the Boolean formulas, the search engine would recognize it. I'm going to make the change in B right here. It's going to ask you to do away with A and D totally. These terms like this, so that this is now translated into apple plus oranges minus mangoes. Okay. Why it is so? Now I'm going to explain this concept in detail. Okay. Let's look at this slide. We'll start with A and D now. Now this is where, when you are using A and D operator, you're going to learn some of the limitations or some of the advantages of using A and D. Remember, I'm not saying that you cannot use A and D, but you would also find out that a lot of times you don't need to put A and D. Instead, the quotes or the quotes held individual words or search phrases would actually substitute the adding of or using A and D as a conjoiner. So that's what we are going to figure out. And we would also learn at times where use of A and D is a better option, and other times just putting those within quotes may be a better option. So those are some of the conditions which we can figure out once we go through the concept of how A and D works. Now I have two examples shown here, which is using A and D command. In this search, we have got, let's say, the word textual semantics, and then we have got another word, lexical semantics. And we have used A and D as if we want both the terms on the left and the right of it to join together, okay, or to be present in the search results. So A and D is literally forcing the search to find both the wordings or both terms on the left and the right. Comparing it with number 2, we have put textual semantics within quotation marks and lexical semantics within quotations, as if these are two individually each single search terms, whereas in the first one we've got 4 search words or keywords. So when we are using something with the open quotes and we are using the AND operator, one of the things that would happen is that you will find certain documents. First of all, let's look at this one where I'm pointing. Here, what the search does normally as a default action is that wherever the booleans require for the terms to be on the left and right, be present on the left hand side and the right, as an AND and an OR, it will first of all by default try to look for the terms that is in its closest vicinity. So AND would compare lexical with semantics before it starts to look for the word semantics on the extremities of it, or the word textual on the left extremity. So what you will find is that invariably you will get results that would have the word semantic and lexical present. All right, so that's going to be pretty much like a forced return, or somewhat A and D would act as if it is going to look for the 2 words that are closest to it first. On the other hand, the search may return results that would contain words but would start to match partial portion of the word that somehow includes the word textual as an integral part of the word contextual. So it is just going to highlight this portion and return the word textual as being present, but in the wrong context. Now it is talking about contextual. All right. So textual gets connected with the as if it is partially accepted, because it is not contained inside of the quotation marks. So the integrity of the word textual will be lost, and therefore you won't get exactly the word textual, but it would bring something that says contextual. This is just behavior of when you don't put certain words within the quotation marks. In the case of how the results would show a combination of words, because none of these are inside of the quotes, you would find different combinations. Like you will find lexical semantics, you would find just the pages that have the word textual or lexical or textual semantics, because now it is going to start to combine with each other, or lexical may combine with textual, textual may combine with semantics, semantics may combine with, so all these combinations will happen even if you have used the word, the Boolean operator A and D. So in order for you to control something, even with the Booleans, you need to be very mindful of how you're going to use the quotation marks to get better results or more controlled results. Now, if we compare 1 with 2, we've got 2 terms, lexical semantics and textual and lexical semantics, but within quotation. We got 560 results. Here, it was a simpler or a more logical way of how you would have expressed it, with the intent that search is required to find both of these terms, textual semantic and lexical semantics, inside of those the returned pages. And see, when you use A and D, you found pages that had both wordings, and the results were 560. Now, supposing if I used the same search term, both terms, without putting the A and D in between, what is going to be the effect of search? The effect is shown by number of results. You could see that we found 548 results, which is somewhat similar. Just having a little bit of a difference means that the impact of your search query was the same. A minor difference in the number of results does not matter. So literally 2 and 3 are the same. And if I can get the results similar to the result in 3 to be similar to 2, what would be my, what should be my choice? Should I be using 3 or should I be using 2? That's question number 1. And of course, the answer to that is that you understand, first of all, how one is substituted by another. If you look at 3, you could see that the quotation mark has worked in 2 ways. One, textual semantics, as 2 words are returned as a single search phrase or a single search term. Second is that it was forced, or it was mandatory for the search to return because it is inside of the quotation mark. So quotes has worked as a phrase creator and also a mandatory enforcer of return of these words or match of these words in that document. Similarly, lexical semantic would have the same impact as textual semantic, because this is also within the quotation marks. And if I don't put anything in between, I am literally asking the search to bring both of these search terms, similar to how it would do it if I put A and D command or A and D Boolean in it. A and D has the same effect as a plus sign. Okay, so what I would do now is leave this open for you to have a closer look at it while we take a little bit of a break. And when I return, I'm going to give you the method that we used. We don't use A and D anymore. I mean, in our searches, we hardly use it. Occasionally we do, because we get caught in a certain type of situation where A and D is required. However, 90% of the time we use number 3 as a preferred search and not to put A and D. All right. This is just doing A and D part. We'll do OR as well. But the concept of A and D is more important, because the quotes are going to tell you that there is a relationship. Okay, so I'm sorry. We're still going to continue with the plus sign. So I'm going to do 3 more slides, and let's do it now. Remember, we learned where we are leaving a gap of a single character, single digit. It is separating basically individual words as keywords. And that is one function of leaving a gap of a single character. However, the search engine assumes as a default action that there is a plus sign which is occupying this gap, as if it is simulating the A and D, or it is assuming that individually each of these words are to be connected or are supposed to be together. So when you do a search without using any of these inside of the quotes, what search is going to try to do first is that it's going to try to find all 3 of these wordings. Not necessarily in the same order, but the plus sign would mean that all of these words should be present, or it's going to try to bring you a document that has all words somewhere on those documents. Okay. So this is an assumption or something which the algorithms are programmed to perform for finding all of the words that you put inside of your search box. Now, when we are, so this is the outcome. This is now the ones that this plus sign is an assumed plus sign. You're not going to put them or you're not going to think of these as being there replacing the A and D. You just assume that there was a gap here, and what the outcome is that the search would try to find all of these in the documents. That's the first default action, even without quotation marks. But it is not enforced. It is not going to force the search to find all of the, if it can find it conveniently, it will do that. However, without quotes, the assumed plus sign is not an enforcer. It is just an assumption, and therefore the search would give its very best to find it, but it would not make it a mandatory return. That's all you have to know. Okay. So what happens is that if it is assumed to have a plus sign, it also means that it could be somewhat similar to this equation or this query where we have used A and D's. Okay, so that's the effect of A and D. But if we put A and D in between these three words, what is going to happen is that it is going to give a similar result as shown here, where each word is put within the quotes. So you can think of C as if the A and D has an effect as shown after the is equal to sign with the similar type of search query with the quotes enclosed on each keyword. So they're all forced. It's all A and D. We don't therefore really need the A and D right now. Okay. Right. Now, on the other hand, when we put these three keywords within quotation, it is not the same as internet research specialist within quotations. Do you know why?
Because the one where it is internet research specialist and each individual keyword is in quotes, that's just going to guarantee that each of those words are in like the results. But
Right.
internet research specialist, all in quotes as one search term, is going to ensure that all of that is included verbatim within the search.
Exactly. How about D, where, and that is exactly true answer, and I've explained it very well. With what we have in D, internet research specialist, if we compare these three words and compare it with A, where these three words are outside of quotes and none of these are encapsulated within quotations individually, what would be the difference in A and D? Only this part.
You're not going to get, what we're trying to do is get the exact phrase in its sequence, correct?
That is correct. But if it is only to compare D with A
won't necessarily give us internet research specialist in that sequence, will it?
Exactly. And the other thing is that even if there is an assumed plus sign, these three words are not guaranteed to be present in your search results. All right. In whatever sequence. I mean, one of these words could be dropped easily by the search. Okay. Whereas in D, all three words have to be present in that document, which is returned in your search results. So this is where the individual words are within quotes enforced, and these are mandatory for the search to return, whereas internet research specialist, any of these words can be dropped, or only a single word can be entertained. Rest of them might not even be present in the first few pages. It's just up to Google to make its own mind about it, because you've given it the flexibility. So D and E are different, and what we have in D versus what we have in C are somewhat similar, and they act exactly as if you can do the same search without putting the and. Instead, you can put individual words within quotation. That's all we have to know. This is just assumptions. We've done this part. Now we are doing the theory or the concepts today. In the next class, we will actually be doing the practical examples, but we have to cover or and minus sign and the A and D and quotation first before we start to do practical examples, because we're going to use a combination of these operators. So I have to finish up the rest of the booleans. Now next is OR operator. Okay. This example where it's putting OR, or by the way, we can substitute OR with a vertical bar. I told you that. And usually if I have a preference to use the operator with the, in the textual format versus the symbolic format, I would rather use symbols. I feel that they're slightly more accurate. I mean, I can't tell you exactly why, but you can think of it as based on my experience, personal searches that I do quite a bit. So I use notations instead. But anyway, over here we have applied the textual part, which is OR in capital. OR is technically interpreted as at least one search term is required, more than one, or all can be returned. So just read this carefully. It is saying at least one search term is required, all right? Whatever you place on the left and on the right of it. More than one, which means both can be found also, or all more than one, meaning both can be found, or all can be returned, meaning that it could be pie pudding together. So literally with OR, the first instance of how it is going to function in the Google search is that it's going to look for both the terms first. If it cannot find both, it's going to find at least one out of the two that's on either side of it. All right. So that's why we sometimes think of OR to have a same effect as OR and A and D together. So find both, meaning and, or find at least one out of the two, or out of whatever is on the left and right of it. So the default action is that it's going to find both first, find at least one of the two out of these two where OR is applied, or is assumed. Basically, we are talking about this query. We're talking about pie or pudding. And under this, where I'm pointing to is just giving you the outcome of how the search would treat it. So first treatment is to find both, which means that it is going to assume that there is an and. Now, there is a lot of assumptions here. Its assumption is based on how the search engine is trying to make search more flexible, yet controlled, but having a priority of rules where one effect or one process is followed by another. So the first effect is it's going to look for both the words, and then if not found in the first few snippets, then find word pie or pudding. So the second instance would be to actually where it's going to use the or as it is intended. So pie or pudding is the second effect. So effectively, when we doing or, we are thinking of the search to be acting as if it is applying and plus or together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, whenever we have terms that is falling on the right or the left of either the and or or that you're using, there is to be a relationship between the two terms, because idea is to either have a relationship with each other so that it can be more realistic to find the result that has a relationship that makes sense. It could be linguistically driven, or it could be relationship based on how one affects another. So this slide is just telling you or giving you an idea of a relationship that gets built when you're using or and even A and D. I think there was a previous slide we missed, but this would explain it, and the same goes for A and D as well. So when we have a concept X or Y, first of all, whenever you're using OR, make sure that you're comparing apples with apples or apples with something which is similar or a different variety of apple, just an idea where the OR may be effectively applied. So it makes sense for OR to be used in the first place. So what it's going to do is that it is going to create a relationship between X and Y, where X and Y are two different terms. The impact of X with Y, just for you to remember, that's more on the theoretical side and on the conceptual side. X similar to Y and X within Y. So these four relationships, which is more to do with algebraic expressions, and assuming that we are basically viewing the booleans in the sense of how the algebraic expressions make relationships. That's exactly the theme here. So the X and or Y, the impact of X with Y, X similar to Y, and X within Y. All right, so here we are going to start to deal with the combination of A and D with OR. It's just an illustration of how we can translate some of these into algebraic expressions. So remember that whenever you're using an OR, now you're not going to use these brackets or parentheses over here, all right? This is just for illustration purposes. Whenever we are using an OR to compare two terms, you can assume that we are creating the parentheses or enclosing these two terms to be resolved first before it can be combined with or join something that is outside of parentheses. That's how the algebraic expressions or algebraic laws are applied. It's going to act in a similar way. So when we have something here that says how to we have put within quotes being stop words, so just think of that as something which is to be created, or which is to be a relationship, and a relationship of how to with draw or paint. And we have used A and D as if it is a plus sign over here or something. If you translate this into notations, it could be a plus sign here, okay, that replaces A and D. So main idea that I'm emphasizing on using OR is that it has to be resolved first before any of these two terms like draw or paint can be attached to something that is outside of the parenthesis, which is in here how to. So it could be either how to draw or how to paint, but these two will get resolved first when you are creating an equation like this one, for instance, in the second one. This is your actual query string. So you don't need the A and D anymore when you're doing actual searches. So you put how to within quotes. Draw or paint is the option or the comparison with the OR as something that needs to get resolved first. So draw, if it is draw is the word that is more frequently attached with or found alongside how to, it's going to pick up how to draw. Perhaps later on with the snippets that's going to follow, you may find something that says how to paint. But in any case, whatever the outcome is, it's going to relate to or default to getting one out of the two variables, which is draw and paint, to be able to attach with how to. Then, yeah, the outcome is how to draw or how to paint. That's all. How to paint, how to, or it could be, you'll get more frequency of how to paint if the word paint is more frequented or is more combined with or has a relationship with the how to. So either of these options would be the outcome after you have written a query like this. Next is the vicinity of words that is closest to the operators you're using. So in this case, we have used vacation and London or Sophia. So what we are trying to do is to get or find a vacation package either for visiting London or visiting Sophia. Now, Sophia is, is another country, another city, and London is, depending on which of these two are to be considered or to be joined with the word vacation. The search is first going to resolve London or Sophia, which one is more popular, that combines later with the word vacation. So if London is more, it's got a more of vacation packages, it's going to start showing up. Invariably, it's going to show a lot of packages that is for London versus Sophia. So this is when you create a situation of comparing two variables or two textual words, one of which is more popular than the other. Then the popular one would have the likelihood of attaching with vacation. Okay, this is not a big problem. Now, one thing that I would like to mention at this time is the vicinity of the words. So let me show you this slide. See here, we have words like market research or market study, for instance. So whenever you're using or, first these two will be combined, and then the ones that are on the extreme side of it will be the words or search phrases that can be combined. So the first impact would be for the words that are closest on the either side of the OR. Okay. These are some of the examples of using OR. This first example we've done. In the second example, and here we have used the vertical bar instead of OR. It is a primal recipe. It's a recipe called Paleo recipes. It's a ancient recipes of something. I'm not sure what it is, but it is the kind of words that we are using for the example. So primal Paleo recipes. If we have an OR sign in between primal and Paleo, what would be the effect? What would be the outcome? The outcome would be that the search is going to first try to find all 4 of these words, even if you have used OR. And if it cannot find all 3, it's going to start to make combinations, like it's going to look for primal paleo, it is going to look for primal recipes, it is going to, so it is going to start to combine and start to create a kind of a chaos or a combination that may not be as feasible for you to actually apply, only because with one single OR you have given way for the search to start to combine anything that it would find on the right of it, or it could be wordings on the left, as many as you'd like. But once you've put OR, it is going to make funny combinations, and therefore it is less controlled. In example 3, this is the best way, where you have 2 variables and each one of these or 2 of them have some relationship, or you'd be satisfied with finding either of these as the outcome. Okay. Now what happens when you have multiple number of words on the left and 1 word on the right of it? So you could see that it is going to start to combine it in different ways. It's going to think recipes gravy and sausage to be 1 term, or it is going to default or think of it as with the gaps that we discussed, as if it needs to find all 3 of these, or find the word biscuit, or find these 2 together. So it's going to act as shown right here: recipes, gravy, sausage, or biscuit. So it may just find this part and ignore the other part on the right hand side. If you have an example as in 5, sausage biscuit, within quotes, recipe review, what is it going to do? It's going to start to combine the word sausage biscuits, because it is already within quotes, so it's going to become absolute term, which is not going away, or it's going to be part of your result, except that now it is going to combine with either the word recipe or the word review. If you have an example as shown in number 6, and you have more than 1 instances of OR, then you are creating a huge problem. You try not to use OR many times with terms that are multiple in number. There would be reason for you to do it later on, but the impact of it, or the effect of it, is that it is going to, keep looking for the combinations which would give you a lot many results. As you could see right here, all these combinations will start to show up. So the idea of showing you example 6 is that OR is less controlled when you have multiple terms to match against, and you have multiple instances of OR used in the same search query. But there is a formula for containment, or where you feel that it needs to be more controlled. We would be able to run those kind of controlled queries later, but this is just showing you the impact. Another thing, in example number 7, for instance, we have used 2 terms within quotation marks, and then we have used OR here, cheese and biscuits. What's going to happen in this case? In this case, sausage is definitely a term that's going to be found, but sausage may combine with cheese, or sausage may combine with biscuits, where the paleo recipes might combine with cheese or biscuits. But what will happen is that the recipe, the part where you've used the term paleo recipe, that is going to have to be found along with the word sausage. So if the word sausage is not part of the paleo recipe, the cheese and the biscuits would not help, and your search would fail. So a relationship of having some sense or some context with each other is most important, where both terms or any terms you're using are mandatory, it needs to have the flexibility of finding the combinations with OR that makes sense or has is discoverable by attaching with both the terms sausage and paleo recipes to be present in the in the content pages. So if you have more than a few terms, you've got like 3 terms here: cloning humans, human clone, cloning ethics. What's going to happen when you use OR? When you use OR, you would be able to get to at least or find more than one term, or all 3 of them, or at least 1 out of the 3. So if you use more instances of OR, more than one, what you are also telling the search is to find at least 1 out of the 3. So it may not find the other 2, so unless that choice is going to be the terms out of the 3 that would be sufficient for you, don't use extra OR. In fact, if I take the term okay, I have it here. Excuse me. If I have this one right here, what's going to happen? So 4 against 4.1, what is it? What is the difference? And how is the OR going to behave?
Okay. So in 4, the search results could be a combination of the individual like search terms, but is going to produce at least one of the terms in quotes. Whereas 4.1 is going to either produce results that have, well, it's going to try to produce both on either side of the OR, but it will most likely just reproduce either cloning humans in quotes, or the other half of it will be human clone and cloning ethics will be guaranteed to be in that search term.
Correct.
Search results. Sorry.
So in 4.1, what we are going to observe mostly is that it is going to look for preference for the search would be to find the term cloning humans or human clone as more preferred because it is closest to OR. Okay, because now the algebraically it is going to act like this. Okay. And first it's going to resolve this and then find cloning ethics also as a mandatory return. So it is not going to ignore cloning ethics at all, right? It is going to, however, make a choice between cloning humans or human clone. This is the default action. Otherwise, what you could do, if you remove this and think of human clones and cloning ethics as in, as a mandatory return with the cloning ethics, you are if I express it algebraically, this is how it's going to come across for this search, meaning that it is definitely going to find cloning ethics, and then it may combine human clones with cloning ethics because it's an assumed A and D over here, or it is an assumed plus. So basically what will happen is that these two would have a kind of an affinity with each other, because you have not used the OR over here. You have basically just left a gap, and that means it's an assumed and a plus sign. So here it is making a choice between these two, whereas over here it is asking the search to bring both of these, right, as a mandatory return, because it is assumed to be a plus sign. So this is, when you would start to get all kinds of results. It's because OR has that peculiar way of what it is capable of doing and where there is some limitations to it. Anytime that I do make my search appear like I did in 4.1, it is for sure that I'm going to either find cloning humans or human clone in the first instance. In the second instance, what might happen is that it will totally drop cloning humans and just combine these two, So this may take precedence over the OR command. So this might happen also. So so you have to know whenever you're using OR that there could be these other terms that are, multiple terms on the right of it or the left of it that may combine as if they are the A and D, or they are together to be found as a mandatory return, because mandatory is already understood with the quotation marks enclosed. So these are some of the shortcomings, some of the things that so sometimes what I would do is I would just get rid of this totally, and I would run my clean, clear search with these two words and run another search where my second best option says that I want I would run them as two separate searches if I can. This would give me a better set of results, because then you see there is a there is this problem of combining cloning ethics with human clone as if it is got an A and D in between. So sometimes I would separate it just the way that I did over here. A good example of how OR should be treated is shown in page 96. You can see that there is an example 8.22 that is going to tell you exactly as I described, some of the limitations. So what is the outcome of how you are using OR in multiple times, using it multiple times? What could be the shortcomings? So this example will explain it. And page 96, 8.22. When more than two terms are used with OR operator, that's a continuation of what we just learned, but this is slightly more complex. So let's suppose we have a query with the word internet or online, and then market research, market study or market demand. Let's suppose these are the terms we are looking for, 1, 2, 3 of them, and then we have internet or online. So this makes it slightly more complicated, only because we don't know if online is going to connect with market study, market demand, or market research, or whether internet is going to connect with market study, market demand. So literally what we have here are 4 search terms, and we have 3 instances of OR used. So what is going to happen? First of all, basically what is happening now in example 2 is that we are replacing or substituting the quotes with the A and D just to break it down into groups. Now, when we have used the quotation marks enclosed, literally we have cut off online and internet from the equation that included these 3 variables or these 3 search terms. So if we had not made market research get enclosed within quotes, it would not separate the internet and online as the first OR instance of, or the first instance to get resolved. Basically, with relationship to internet and online, we are saying resolve internet and online first, and then make a choice between finding market research, market study, and market demand. Okay. So we are not putting A and D over here, but we can, just to separate it or break it into, I mean, we could put A and D, we could, or we don't necessarily have to put A and D, but A and D is used here with the intent of separating this group, which is these 3 terms, from this group, which is internet and online. So remember, I told you there are instances where you would want to use A and D. This is one of them. So in example 2, we have actually been able to successfully separate these 3 instances as a choice, and these 2 as the first choice. In example 3, if we had put, now this has become 5 terms. You could see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. In number 3, we have separated, or we have used online within the quotation marks. So what we have done is we have forced on the word online to be present no matter what, and internet would be a word of choice and not necessarily having the mandatory connection with either of these terms on the right of it. So here the internet is not stressed, whereas online is stressed. With the or doesn't matter at this time when we are using internet outside of the quotation marks. However, online has become mandatory. So now the search is going to look for either online, and it's going to look for market research or market study or market demand. In number 4, internet, online. Okay, so here instead of using the quotation, A and D, we could even put an OR after the online. But when we put the OR after online, we are confusing the search, where now we are telling the search to find any of these terms with their combinations without making the word online appear as a mandatory find or a mandatory relationship with the market research, market study, or market demand. Similarly, internet is also become the option for the internet to connect with online, which we don't want. We just wanted internet to connect with market research, market study, and market demand. But with this OR, what we have done is that we have now made the search look for a combination of either of these two words with all the words right here. However, it may drop both of these words, which means that it is going to defeat the purpose where online and the word internet can be a choice, a total choice. And therefore 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms are there now, and the search may find any of these or any combination of these. So the placement of OR is important. Understanding where the quotation marks would enforce a connectivity or where A and D can be used. It's depends on how well you have practiced your concepts. And here it is saying example 1 is not the same as 2 and 3, whereas example 2 and 3 are similar, and example 4 is different from 1, 2, and 3. 4, I explained to you, is basically giving an option for any of these words to be found or their combinations. Confused yet or no? I think the use of OR seems very easy, and it seems like a more of a controlled element for performing your search, but it is very finicky, very technical, and sometimes you need to be really very creative in order to make these work for you.
Sir, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
On
Awesome.
the previous slide, on number 3, it
Yes.
says two groups.
5 terms, 2 groups.
Uh-huh.
Here, what has happened is that groups are the ones that are that's got a pink background or a highlighted in pink, or that this one is one group, and this
Okay.
one is the second group. So what we intended.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So continuing with, well, here is a simpler, here we are going to try to summarize what we have learned about OR, its behavior, that is. Supposing we have these two terms, internet or research. My gosh. Okay, I think. I think let me just do a little bit of tweaking here. I think maybe while explaining this slide, was removed these quotation marks. Anyway, let's, I think the first one is enough, basically. Let's just have a look at the two words, internet, and let me run this slide. See, when we have internet or research, oh, okay, I see what it is. I'm so sorry. Okay, hold on, it's correct. What happens if you reshuffle the words, or you put the word that is on the right hand side to be placed on the left hand side, or would that matter? Like if you are, comparing just two variables or two textual words, what would happen if you change the positions of one of the words that was on left to go on the right, and the right one goes on the left? Would that have an impact, right? So if I wrote apples or oranges versus oranges or apples, what could be the, how would the search be looking at it? So first word, we've got internet, followed by or and research. Now this is our observation, and we base it on tests that we conduct as frequently as we can, so we get a behavioral knowledge of what happens if we had swapped the words that was on left or on the right hand. Research, internet, and internet research. The textual semantics in English attempts to combine words from left to right. That is the convention. So if it is an English language, it is going to, first of all, by default, try to combine internet with research. So more frequently, you will find internet and research together, or where the best effort would be to find the words that is from left to right, meaning that internet and research would prevail. Okay, so this is the first behavior. On the other hand, if you put research first and internet after, meaning that it's on the right hand side, so you have changed the position of both these words, the search is going to look for the combination of words to appear as if they are together, research, internet, okay, which has got a less frequency of being found. Research, internet, probably not so gel together as does internet research. So the placement of the words that you're comparing, when you are okay with finding both together, and the position of where you're going to place them on either side, first or last, or the last or first, switching them would give you different results. The second instance would be that it's going to find the word internet as one of the more prevalent word against the other. So that's going to be the second action. The same way in research and internet, it's going to look for the word either research or internet as a second instance. First would be to find combinations. So if I'm looking for either the word internet or research, more than likely I'll find internet research together, more frequently showing up in the results. Less frequency of finding research and internet together as if it is one phrase, research, internet, less likely to be found, and therefore more defaulting on finding either of the words research or internet, or finding research and internet present there but not in the same sequence. So occasionally you want to craft your query so that if there is or more frequencies of using ORs, the way in which you're going to set your words as being, starting from left to right, would have an impact where two words together or three words together would be the first behavior of search to look for them as if they are, linguistically speaking, they are set together one next to another, starting from left to right. Is this concept clear? Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, good.
Yes.
We are still doing OR. There's so many variations of it. So let's see what this slide is showing us. It's just reiterating what I explained as a practical example of what the outcome was when we actually did this search. We switched the wordings. So internet or research, when we did this, the best way to check how the results are showing up is that you look at some of the some of the boxes that come as predictive search, suggestions, people also ask, those kind of things. So when we did internet or research, we found that internet research together were getting combined automatically, even if you put OR, because the default action, as I mentioned, and because of the language algorithms, it's going to look for internet first word followed by the second word research. So it's going to start to show up as it did over here. You see? And when we did research and internet together, they weren't coming up as a phrase or two words. Instead, it started to break it up and started showing results like separating the word internet and the word research. You see, these are not combined, these are separated. Same way you could see the word internet and the word research are separate, So I guess it matters which word you place before or after when you're building your search queries with OR. Here are some of the examples that you can run on your own. It is more like a homework, different ways of how we have applied OR, different variations of it. So you can look at the outcome of this and then, perhaps come up with more questions if you feel that these are the kind of variations that's giving you, the results that you couldn't understand, or you feel that according to the convention, the behavior is not as discussed. You can, use them as a reference. So it's not for us to do it right now, but more like an assignment. However, when we are doing our examples, when we meet next, we'll be doing most of it anyways. This we don't have to worry about. Now, whenever we are using OR and there are more terms that are set, as you can see in this search query, 3 terms and 2 instances of OR, what would be the behavior of search? What would be the results that you will be observing? First would be that you will find that certain terms are more frequently expressed in your search results than others. There is this marking in different colors on the left hand side that is showing you the priority levels or the frequency with which certain terms appear more prevalent in your result versus other search terms. So you can look at them as preferred first to be more frequently observed, market research. Second is industry research. Third is marketing study. So sometimes it is a good idea to use the expression or your search query with the OR to come up with the with the type of wordings that the search engine is more friendly with, or can be sufficient enough or would suffice for your requirements out of these multiple terms that are more frequently acknowledged by Google as being more popular, so that you may want to just clear out or filter out the other terminologies. So to focus on the one which has a priority for Google to be showing, that could lead you to a better search results. So sometimes we use OR only for that reason, to compare terms to and to find which could be better ones to add to your final search queries. Okay. The minus sign. In this one, you could see that we have used the minus sign as I guess, why is it incorrect? I will show you. See, in the first one, the NOT, for instance, because the Google does not recognize it, you cannot use NOT. Instead, you're going to use a minus sign. And as I suggested, supposing you had put a minus sign for peach pie, where you are you want to make sure that the word peach pie does not show up in your results, and you're only looking for the fruit peach. And if you wrote it the way it is set in this example, you would see that minus peach and then the word peach is negating each other, because the word pie is not connected with the word peach, only because peach pie is not put within quotations. So here peach is negating the first search word peach, which is what you're looking for. So instead, what you want to do to correct it is to do something like, put peach pie within quotation marks. And this we have done in 4. But anyway, there's a third one also, which is the example of peach ice cream. And you don't want the word peach pie, so you would just simply put peach pie within quotes. And peach ice cream you can put within quotes or leave it out, doesn't matter. It's up to you. But this part which you want to leave out should be a phrase or the entire wordings that needs to be ignored or needs to be excluded from your search results. This relationship, just remember this, the relationship chart, and as I mentioned to you, this is more on the theoretical side, but it is saying X except Y, impact of X without Y, X not similar to Y, or X outside of Y, where X and Y are two different terms. So that's the concept. Why we use minus sign a lot of times is because we want to eliminate false positive. That means a situation or a search phrase, something that you wrote which makes sense linguistically but may appear to have two different meanings, or it has a name of someone very famous or a personality that keeps coming up because a name which you actually need to go to is similar to that of a famous personality. So it'll just keep coming, and therefore it would probably be so frequented and it would be so popular that first few pages will be filled with that. And for you to have a sense of knowing that now you are unable to get rid of it, or it is not showing you the person or a place or whatever you want to get to, just because it has a lot of similarity to something that is famous, even if it is an event that is happening with anything that you don't want from a certain name, like Rex Harrison. I was doing that search, and the gentleman Rex Harrison I couldn't find because it kept bringing me the actor's result, who I guess it was My Fair Lady or something, which kept coming over and over. So I had to really filter it out and get rid of it. Took me a long time to first of all get rid of all the contacts and attributes that are attached to Rex Harrison. So I have to put a minus sign against a source called IMDb, which is from movies, the name of the movies, the character's name, everything I had to put minus, minus, minus. And it made my query look so big and it was so long that eventually it started to buckle in. So a minus sign is very useful, but there's a limit to how many times you can use it. I figured that out to an extent where I feel that using it more than 5 times in a single search starts to break the query. So to make it short, we just have to be very creative. But here is one example of false positive, which means that I have a name John Smith, which is apparently a name with it's comparable to a name John Doe, for instance, that people use for samples or for templates or some I mean, it's not really easy to get to the actual person whose real name or Christian name is John Smith, just because it is like John Doe. Anyway, so it's, as an example, John Smith is who I want. I put it within quotation so that it's stressed to be returned or assumed to have exact same name. But here I'm not looking for resumes or examples of resumes. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the resume of John Smith, but I'm not looking it up for, in the job search or anywhere where people are offering jobs like, we've got sites like Simply Hired or others that are for typically job sites, and they have sample resumes, they have templates. So I am only looking for a resume and nothing to come back to me as jobs offers or samples of resumes. So I used a minus sign to get rid of these wordings, which frequently were messing up the results. So giving a false positive situation. The only consideration that one of the consideration in using the minus sign is that you have to use exactly same spelling of the words that you want to get rid of. For instance, if the word sample with singular, singular word sample is used, I'm going to use a minus sign here, as well as a minus sign to get rid of the plural format of it, which means literally the word samples with the S at the end. I have to put it with the minus sign so that, because it's not going to do lemmatization or stemming process. It is going to look for words or search phrases you're getting rid of as verbatim or as they are set exactly. So for that reason, whenever I'm using a minus sign, I also use the plural format so that the search is exactly going to get rid of both the singulars and plurals. So this is one of the shortcomings of minus sign, that it wouldn't respond to finding synonyms or finding similar wordings. None of that acts on or reacts with the minus sign. So it has to be exact the way it is written. Rest are examples of false positive, minus signs, stuff like that. Now, these are some of the examples that are showing you how some of the ways in which we are going to write the query could be correct or incorrect. So in the first one, it says Internet Research Specialist jobs or Web Search Specialist jobs. This is correct. You're comparing apples with apples. The sense in which you have used is correct. The only replacement is the word web instead of internet and search instead of research, because that sort of happens quite a bit. And if any of these are satisfactory to me, I would put both the terms the way they're said here. In the second one, if we have three terms and we wrote it like this, this is the correct way of writing as well, except that here the option would be, the first option would be to find web search specialist or web research specialist salary. So either of these would be all right, but the word internet research specialist has to be there because there is no or sign against or next to where you have the second term web search specialist written, and all of these are within quotations. So what separates web search specialist with internet research specialist is that between these two, internet research specialist is mandatory, and where web search specialist is followed by the OR. And the term web research specialist salary, it means that either of these two could be acceptable terms that would attach eventually with internet research specialist. So internet research specialist is not going anywhere, whereas these two could be the options where any of these two can combine, or both can combine with internet research specialist. In number 3, internet research specialist, we have written the word resumes as a negative word or something we don't want to be in our results. And then we have used the OR to compare it with web research specialist and use the minus sign again to remove the word resume. So there is a convention of how you should be writing, putting the minuses or eliminating certain words, but you don't want to use the minus sign twice. So always remember, if it is the same word and the same search query, it is going to create a lot of problem. The same words are put in with the negative signs twice. So this is the incorrect way of writing. And besides, whenever you're going to put a minus sign alongside the OR operator, what you're doing is that now you are comparing apples with oranges or something which is different, or by the convention of how OR needs to be applied, both terms on the left and right of it has to have a function that is similar in terms of how it is to be accepted as either or, and has to be a comparison that makes sense in terms of how it is expressed. So apples with apples or apples with oranges are the two ways of writing your OR query, except when you have something which is set in a different pattern with a different way, as it is shown in here. It is going to create an impact which is going to go against the convention of using your OR. So if I use it, you cannot use a minus sign to compare something which is a search term, but to be compared with another search term with the OR in between, meaning that this resume is incorrect. What you could do to correct it, I'll show you how to correct this. You can first correction is that now you can compare internet research with web research specialist jobs, and then usually we put the minus sign or anything we want to extract or not to bring in the search result. We always put it at the very end of our search query. It's not a rule, but if you adopt a practice or a habit of a sort that ensures or guarantees that you will not be making mistakes, then you can build your own conventions or create your own way of how you're going to express queries. Now, if I do the same search and I use a minus sign here, or if I have to use two instances of minus signs as a choice, this is what I would do. First of all, this is acceptable. Or the word, make it easy, biodata. I can write it like this, and I can still use OR, but I cannot put resume over here to compare with something which is different in format, and it's in form in which it is set. Okay, so this could be correct. That is incorrect. This is correct. Another thing that you cannot do when you're using a minus sign. Never put a minus sign along, and this is usually a error of haste. When you are writing something, you put the wrong, you put the inverted quotation marks at the wrong place where you intended to put it over here, and you put the minus or the extracted negative word inside of the quotation marks. It's going to be incorrect. These are some of the basics of how you're going to use the minus sign. That's about it as far as the minus is concerned. And I think it's similar. Yeah, all the examples are the same. I've mentioned it already. Next are the query examples, where we actually are going to use all three Boolean operators to build queries ourselves. You can come up with the queries if you'd like for the next session. You can practice them and ask questions if something is not working as explained. But let's keep it for the next session. We are going to do hands-on. All right. By the way, there are a few more slides. Let's just finish this one. There's nothing major about it. Let's run it anyways. We still have five minutes or so. Now, it's just showing you how you can replace the text of writing Booleans with the notations. All right. So these are the examples: finch or sparrow, and exotic. So using, first of all, the Boolean text format. And now I'm going to show you how it is going to be replaced. So here, or is replaced by the vertical bar. Here, or is replaced again by the vertical bar, and command is replaced by putting the word exotic within the quotation marks. It is like a revision for you, so you know. Similarly, in this one, again, finch or sparrow. Don't worry about the parentheses, they are just assumed, but idea is for you to know what notations or symbols are replaced with the text of Booleans. See here, we've got finch and exotic. So we put finch within quotation and exotic within quotes. Okay? Both single words. Similarly, the other ones. And here we are going to show you how the not is applied. We have done the vertical bar and we have done the quotes. So here, NOT, you can see the placement and the gaps, just to make it look clean on how you're going to write your searches. That's just a repeat of the same. So I think we are pretty much done with this part. Next, we are going to do these examples that are talking about parentheses. When you're doing or looking for how the Google operators work, generally in articles or going online, anywhere it is mentioned, they're also including parentheses as part of what is prescribed by Google for search reasons. But frankly speaking, it is not entertained by Google search. It is not considered as having a meaning similar to how it is expressed in the algebraic sense, where the parentheses make certain variables or place them within groups. That does not work. So from the way it is set by Google, parentheses is not recognized. It is considered as stop words, or basically symbols that are ignored. So how do we overcome that barrier? For example, what I'm going to try to explain in the next lecture, I'll just give you an idea of, remember how, supposing in your search, you have make a group, take an example of, say, London, Paris versus so supposing you want to search for the terms in the group, and the group says, let this be group A and let this be group B. So if this is the search you need, then would you be able to put or search for two groups, or search to find two groups of, let's say, cities, right? So how are you going to search London and Paris and Istanbul and Sofia as two different groups, A and B, and you want the search to find either of these, or to find a group, a combination of these two with having the OR or A and D in between. So this is what needs to be figured out, I guess. And we have some good example to explain what Google is capable of doing. First of all, Google won't operate or won't give you an outcome as shown, or wouldn't respond to this type of query. Just because you cannot split or compare two groups, or you cannot ask the search to find things within groups or make groups out of multiple search terms, and for Google search to find any of those groups for you. And the groups you can only make physically, you can only make groups when you put terms within parentheses. Otherwise, you cannot create groups. So that's where the problem is. And then we're going to see what is the best way out of it. And we'll show you the logic and the examples that we have in our slides to tell you what could be the best approach to overcome this. So for now, let's just close our session for today, for tonight or the afternoon. For any one of you, if you have any questions, you can ask right now. You can even send me the question. You can also, I guess, just bring something next time if you'd like, just to see if there is any real search queries that you are interested in, which would apply all these three Boolean operators. We so far not touched on advanced search. We are also going to do something that comes under the domain of Booleans, which we call proximity search. Perhaps that's going to be our next step. And after that, once we get done with all of these components, we will start with the advanced search operators. So if no questions, I'll say enjoy your evenings and afternoons, and I'll see you day after. I might have to, I'm traveling on the 16th, and I won't be available until the 19th. So let me just look at the schedule and see if we have to move one of those classes. I think there is one class that might fall during my travel. So we'll push it a little further. And then I will send you an email. I'll just confirm everything tomorrow and send you the emails. All right, for now, any questions? Everything's all right so far?
Everything's good.
Yeah, all good.
Yes,
Myla,
sir.
Coral, Steve, Gil.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
All
Thank
good.
you.
To apply it.
Sorry, I didn't get the last one. All right. Anyway, thank you so much. Take care. Good night.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night. Jump so much.